Good Monday, everyone, and welcome into today's daily Bible reading for November the 21st. Today we are reading together in Proverbs chapter 5, which is going to have us focusing in on a very specific thought today. We are going to be looking at this chapter, which is in the section, chapters 1 through 9, which focuses on fatherly advice. And you would think, as a father, one of the things you'd really want to focus on with your sons or with your children in general would be to make sure that you are handling the opposite gender in the correct manner. So from the perspective of a father speaking to his son, here within this text, we're going to have the father talking about making sure that you approach women the right way and that you deal with your relationships with women the right way, and recognize that there's a right way to deal with women and to interact with women, and there's a good way to deal with women and interact with women. We're going to see here that marriage is the way in which we should, as men, engage in relationships with women. We need to be very careful of those women who might have very much different morals than we have, who might try to seduce us and cause us to do things that will lead us to ruin. That's what this chapter of Proverbs chapter 5 is all about. So let's go ahead and read about this. And again, I'll just start off on the forefront by saying that these principles that are here, again, apply to both men and women. Of course, the way it is written is from a father to a son about women, but we can also understand the principles here would apply to ladies as well, as you interact with men and have relationships with men as well. So with that being said, let me go and get the text up on the screen here. Proverbs chapter 5. Proverbs chapter 5, again, talking about how to approach and to interact and have relationships with those of the opposite gender. So from the wisdom of Solomon, he says, "My son, pay attention to my wisdom, listen closely to my understanding, so that you may maintain discretion, and your lips safeguard knowledge. Though the lips of the forbidden woman drip honey, and her words are smoother than oil, in the end she's as bitter as wormwood, and as sharp as a double-edged sword. Her feet go down to death, and her steps head straight for Sheol." She doesn't consider the path of life. She doesn't know that her ways are unstable. So now, sons, listen to me, and don't turn away from the words from my mouth. Keep your way far from her. Don't go near the door of her house. Otherwise, you will give up your vitality to others and your years to someone cruel. Strangers will drain your resources, and your hard-earned pay will end up in a foreigner's house. At the end of your life, you will lament when your physical body has been consumed. And you will say, "How I hated discipline, and how my heart despised correction. I didn't obey my teachers or listen closely to my instructors. I am on the verge of complete ruin before the entire community." Now shifting the focus from avoiding seduction to now looking at the need to enjoy marriage. Solomon says, "Drink water from your own cistern." You have to understand the imagery that's mentioned here, that's being used. Water flowing from your own well. Should your springs flow in the streets, streams in the public squares? They should be for you alone and not for you to share with strangers. Let your fountain be blessed, and take pleasure in the wife of your youth, a loving deer, a graceful doe. Let her breasts satisfy you. Be lost in her love forever. Why, my son, would you lose yourself with a forbidden woman, or embrace a wayward woman? For a man's ways are before the Lord's eyes, and he considers all his paths. A wicked man's iniquities will trap him. He will become entangled in the ropes of his own sin. He will die because there is no discipline, and be lost because of his great stupidity. And that is Proverbs chapter 5. Again, we're focusing on this text and the reality of the need to make sure we are dealing with others the correct way, especially in our relationships with those concerning the other gender. Now, this is not the only time in which this is going to be spoken of. It's also going to be mentioned in the next chapter, verses 20 through 35, I believe it is, 20 through 35. And then we're also going to see it in chapter 7 as well. So this is definitely something that Solomon's really focusing on as he's writing these words of wisdom to the one who he describes as his son. And what's interesting about this is that think of it from Solomon's perspective. What does he know about his life and what he has seen? Well, he knows about what his dad did. with Bathsheba and the issues that caused. I think this situation is a bit different than what's being described here, but the reality is that his dad joined himself to someone who was not his wife, and that caused a multitude of issues within his life. I was thinking about Solomon in regards to the number of women that he ends up marrying. It seems as if he really didn't listen much to his own advice, especially once you get down here to the section that talks about, let's see here, enjoying the water from your own cistern. Now, of course, I guess those were his wives, but we know the multitude of them certainly caused a great deal of problems, and that arrangement is not the arrangement that God wanted from the beginning for one man and one woman to be joined in marriage. But nonetheless, we just consider here the wisdom of this text. Number one, you're going to enjoy a relationship with another individual of the opposite gender, it needs to be your wife. It needs to be someone who belongs to you. And just as you would not want to give your wife to someone else to enjoy, so you should make sure that the only joy that you experience is with your wife, with your spouse. Furthermore, whenever we think about the seductive nature of the way she's described as the forbidden woman, who's been mentioned previously in chapter 2 and verse 16, we have to be aware of that. We have to be careful with that. We need to make sure that we are not being caught up in some sort of web that's being weaved by someone who's trying to entrap us, who again does not have the moral standards that we have. We need to make sure that we are handling that relationship appropriately, that we are being cautious, that we're being careful, and if we see danger, we need to run. We need to get out of that situation, not allow it to develop into something that it should not. So many stories I've heard from individuals who have gotten caught up in this issue of being either in an adulterous relationship, or even just a relationship that with someone that wasn't their wife, and it wasn't that they were cheating on someone else, but they just weren't married at all. Whatever it might be. So often the story is, well, I never thought it would happen to me, or I never intended for this to be outcome, or something of that nature. And yet what we see here is that we need to just be wary. We need to be careful. We need to be paying attention to the relationships that we have, and make sure that they are staying in the appropriate context, and that we're not getting carried away and end up engaging in something that we ought not be engaged in. We need to be careful, and being careful, recognizing the need to be careful, comes from having wisdom. Friends, may we be wise in everything, but especially in this text, what we see in chapter 5, while we're also going to see in chapter 6 and chapter 7, we especially need to be wise and need to be careful. We need to listen to the wisdom of God concerning our relationships with those of the opposite gender. I appreciate you so much for tuning into this reading on this Monday. Hope it gives us something to think about. Hope it's a good reminder to us to make sure that we're using wisdom in every respect, and especially concerning the issues at hand. Hope you have a great rest of your Monday. If you have any comments about this particular chapter of the Proverbs, please feel free to leave that in the comments section. And as we go throughout the Proverbs, especially once we get into the text where it's just kind of a shotgun blast of all different types of wisdom in different type of areas, I encourage you to please feel free to leave a comment in the comment section about something that really stands out to you, and how you think that wisdom might be able to help yourself or others in this life. Again, thanks so much. Have a great rest of your day. Take care, and God bless.